Well, welcome back, and thanks so much for being with us on Morning Live. Now, the recent Statistics South Africa population data revealed that the country's 63 million total population, over half of that is actually female, totaling around 32 million people. Now, though women are fairly represented in various sectors of South Africa and in the economy and leadership sectors in particular, gender equality is yet to be achieved. Now, as we mark 30 years of the country's democracy, and it is, of course, Women's Month all of August here in South Africa, this morning we take a closer look at the strides that have been achieved, also the lack of opportunity for women, hampering women's economic independence and their leadership positions in general. And we're joined by a stellar cast this morning. So excited to have them. Let me introduce to you, we have Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, who's the founder of the Umlambo Foundation. Reddy is the global head of supply chain for Nandos. And here in studio with me, I have Thuto Masasa, who's BDO's national head of advisory. So as you can see, an esteemed panel. And thank you so much, ladies. All of you, welcome to Morning Live, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka, let me start with you. Just taking a look at the work you do through your foundation. And of course, this is extensively being involved in education and also leadership initiatives. But looking at the work that you do and where we find ourselves as a nation, let's just take stock very briefly of the strides that we've made so far as a nation and where you think we still have work to do.
Well, sorry, do you want me to say something now?
Yes, please.
Well, I feel even though we've made progress, it is uneven. If I look at where we could be and where we are, there is so much we could have done at this point in time. Girl children who, as we know, if they are fully supported, they could make a big difference in the lives of nations, and in our nations in particular, we certainly fall short. And many women, as parents, as professionals, are also very much needed as supporters of younger women. I also think that we have to start by looking at the barriers that prevent younger women from being the best versions of themselves. And in that case, I'm thinking about education. Because if you really educate a girl, you give her the tools for them to fight for themselves under different circumstances. It is something that if they have, no one could ever take away from them. If they have education, you give them a possibility for them to navigate society in this world that is ever changing. And it is not only about a high investment, it is also about what we as parents, as community, can do to support girls to be the best people they can be. And making sure, for instance, that we can support them to prevent violence that they encounter, as we know now, in many aspects of their lives.
And of course, we have made some serious strides, Thuto, but looking at the workplace in contemporary South Africa, what would you say are some of the challenges, unique challenges that women face today?
Sure. Sakina, let's maybe reflect on the stats itself. So, you know, we get told that there's about, say, 45 to 50% of women participating in the workforce. 32% get to managerial position. 29% get to some level of executive position, 21% actually, and 29% will get to board. Then we've got 10% at CEO level. So you can see as we start to go up the ladder, there is something that really doesn't quite stack up in terms of women participation at a leadership level. So we look at what are some of those structural barriers that women face, and some of them seem simple, but they're not that simple. Mentorship, sponsorship, and networking. It seems very simple, but unfortunately, some of these networking areas are not necessarily, open for women. And because representation is still not there as well, so the networking opportunities tend to be very limited as well. But also, as I said, sponsorship, and particularly really finding people internally that you can identify with, it becomes very limited. As I've given you the stats, when you get to that really top leadership spaces, it's very limited number of women. And I'm a product of representation myself. I got to where I got to because there were women that I could see and I could identify with, and I could see myself actually doing it. And many of them I could name today, including my own mother, who studied whilst I was already an adult, coming from being a nurse to being a physiotherapist, obtaining a master's in physio at Stellenbosch in 1999. So really, when you see other women, it does absolutely help. So if we can sort out things like, really expanding their network, networking opportunities, mentoring, and there are many other organizations, and I can name a few that are really doing a stellar job. And we've got to recognize them, such as your African Women Chartered Accountants in my profession, that is, founded by incredible women that are some of my mentors today. We look at Transversing Liminality, that's been founded by Dr. Lulu Gwagwa as well, doing amazing work in terms of women really just finding themselves and building self-esteem, and also that networking opportunity that I'm talking about, IWF. So there's many, and we're seeing a lot of strides, I think, taking place in the marketplace at the moment, yeah.
And Linda, coming to your leadership role, and for many women, as we heard from Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka and from Thuto now, we talk about the importance of education, the importance of mentorship, but of course, there are challenges that remain. Thuto spoke about the networking, and the boys' club is still a very real issue for many women in trying to get ahead. So in your space, what are some of the challenges that you have encountered as a woman getting to the top?
Yeah, and good morning, and thank you, Sakina, for having me here on board. The reality is there is challenges. There is challenges for women in the workplace. If I look at the last 30 years and how we've come, as an example, I just talk about my mum used to be a blue-collar worker. Here I am as the Nandos head of supply chain globally. But with that, it came with dealing with an all-men working environment. 30 years ago, you would have not found men in supply chain, leave alone men going into global roles. But what did it take? What did it take? It took perseverance, it took determination, it took courage. But now when I look at my career and I look at all those golden nuggets that brought me to where I am, it's how did I find people that believed in me? How did I persevere when times of doubt? How did I look for mentorship, for coaching when I was dealing with challenges? And it's all those sort of things that gave me courage to say, I can do the next thing. I can do more. I can be bold. I can be intentional. Because another thing I found, and this has happened to me in my career as well, how we lack confidence within ourselves. We can look at barriers being outside. We can look at barriers being things that we don't have control of. But what are some of the barriers that we hold within ourselves, coming from some of the social cracks that we come from? And if I look at my journey, it's that what I had to overcome personally within myself to say, what are the things that's holding me back? What do I need to work with? What are some of the things that I'm fearful of that's breaking my confidence? And I'll put a message out there to a lot of young women, face that first, and slowly the barriers that's not within your control will come down.
And, you know, I want us to get really tough with ourselves in these conversations because there are so many young women who look up to each and every one of you. And I think it's so important that the conversation is authentic so that they know what to expect and not think it's a bed of roses and it's going to be easy to get to the top, because it isn't. And I'm so glad that we have all of you this morning, because inspirational women who are here to help us, those of us are still trying to get somewhere to the top, you know, to navigate that path. We're going to take a quick break here on Morning Live. When we come back, we continue the panel discussion focusing on how far South African women have come in achieving economic and leadership emancipation in the country's 30 years of democracy. So let's take that break and we'll continue after this. Welcome back. It's Women's Month here in South Africa, and we are going to focus on women and women's issues for the rest of the month. And we've already started. And of course, it's Women's Day in South Africa on a Friday. So we have another discussion tomorrow. There'll be a one on science next week. So stay with us. And of course, we always enjoy bringing women who have really made it to the top in their fields so that they can act as an inspiration to the rest of us. And our panel this morning discussing, women's issues and focusing on how far South African women have come in achieving this morning's focus, particularly on economic and leadership emancipation in the country's 30 years of democracy. We're joined by Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, founder of Umlambo Foundation. We've got Reddy, who's the global head of supply chain at Nandos. And in studio with me is Thuto Masasa, who's BDO's national head of advisory. And thanks, ladies, once more for your time this morning. So let's just get into the issues. Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka, for example, the gender parity when it comes to pay in South Africa. And it's a worldwide phenomenon, but I just want to bring it home. So last year, for example, when we had the Women's World Cup netball in South Africa, we are sports crazy, but so many of us don't even know that there wasn't actual prize money for the winners. And yet, you look at what the Springboks, for example, earn. You know, even before they go to the World Cup, you already had millions in the account, and they were talking about how much was going to be shared. So just looking at something like women's sport and the disparity there, how do we address these issues beyond just the talk shops that we have and us talking as women and moaning about it? How do we start making meaningful inroads in this regard, Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka?
Yeah, I actually think that it's very important for all of us to make it feel like it's okay for women to be treated unequally when it comes to pay in terms of sports and all other areas where women are treated unequally. Because in many cases, women do hard work. It is as hard as it is for women as it is for men. And it is heartbreaking when you see what women have to take home, what women have to earn at the end of the day. We need actually legislation to make it unacceptable and a crime to underpay and ill-treat women, because at the end of the day, this is about ill-treatment. That when women do work of equal value, they then benefit unequally. I think there are many things that affect women that have been normalized. Part of what we have to do as women and as society is to make sure that we highlight the fact that this is not normal. We have been brought up, not just in South Africa, but around the world, where values that patriarchy has imposed on society that discriminate against women have been made to feel normal. We have to push back against that notion of discrimination being made to feel equal. Women who are educated, who have worked as hard to gain the education they have, and then when they get to the workplace with the men they've studied with, worked hard with at a school and education level, then suddenly they are treated as people who have to prove that they know what they've already acquired through their education. I think it is something that we as women need to push against, but also we need society, we need men in those positions to stand up also for women in order to make sure that this discrimination is not institutionalized, which it is. But we need to make sure that we point out that this is not acceptable.
Indeed. And outside of government legislating for such, Linda, for example, in your position, because what inevitably happens is that women get angry at other women in top positions when they are discriminated against in the workplace, because they feel you are there. Why are you not making sure that the rest of us as women are benefiting from the fact that we have a woman at the top? So talk to us about the challenges, the difficulties that you encounter, for example, in your position. If government is not legislating for equal work for equal pay, what can you do in your position to make sure that it happens in your organization?
Yeah, thank you. And if I look at myself and how I've got here. So firstly, I've got here. I've shattered glass ceilings. I've come to where I've come, and I have a responsibility and an obligation where I am. And my responsibility and obligation as a leader is to pave the path for women that's to follow. There's lessons learned. There's scars that I've got. But I've got to make it easier for other women. And as a female leader, and this is why we need more female leaders, our obligation, our responsibility is to make sure, one, women get fair opportunities, two, women are equally paid as their counterparts. And this is the role we got to do. We got to make it conscious. We got to see the data. We got to see what's there. And when we see disparities, we as leaders, we got to do something about it. And this is my message for women leaders. We come where we are. We're going to see where there is inconsistencies, where there's unfairness, and our responsibility is to make it happen as leaders. And it's not only about pay, it's also about opportunities. Are we taking risk with women? Are we also in the workplace where they don't have experience? Are we giving them the necessary opportunity to say, I'm going to try you out, I'm going to give you this opportunity to make a difference. I'm going to be patient with you. I'm going to mentor you. I'm going to coach you. All those things along with pay is some of the things that I think, one, our new generation of women leaders, we have a responsibility to do that. And secondly, my message is women to be courageous and say no. Say no, I want to be fairly paid. I deserve it. It's due my way. So that's my message as well.
But how easy or difficult is it to do that? Especially, you spoke about networking earlier, Thuto. You walk into a boardroom, you're already outnumbered as a woman. How easy is it to actually assert yourself in that space, in that moment?
Yeah, I'll actually start with maybe talking to the leaders to say it's an ethical matter for me. You know, you cannot really expect two people to do the same type of job, bring the same value, without remunerating them the same way. So I think, again, we need to really unpack that as an ethical matter as leaders of the country. Now, going back in terms of negotiating yourself as a woman, it comes back again with the mentorship. It comes back again with having people that can coach you through these things. And as I said, it's not that easy for women, but there are some organizations that are doing that at the moment. I mean, when I was younger, I didn't have the guts and I didn't know that I could negotiate myself into it, but you could see that certainly my counterpart who's got a family, I don't even have a family at that time, they can actually afford to have a wife who's not working at home, and you can see their means are a lot better than yours. But as you grow through basically just getting mentored and coached, you then start to understand your own value and worth. And when you sit around the room and this is what you deserve. And in terms of what you deserve, often what they will ask when you do look for a job, how much were you getting paid in the last job? But I ask, what actually is the job worth? Because what you are getting paid really has no bearing to what you're going to do going forward. So, and that spiral keeps going, because then whatever you were not able to negotiate yourself, you were young, you didn't have the courage, then it kind of spirals. So ask yourself, what is the value of this job that you want me to take? Because then I'm actually taking forward and not what I used to be.
But again, just making sure that this is something that can be practically asserted is the difficulty.
Yeah.
You get to a job interview, they ask you for your pay slip
Yeah.
from your previous employer.
Yeah.
And how do you navigate that? Because you're already at a disadvantage, from a power perspective. How do you then navigate that space to say, I want to be paid what this job is worth and not what you think my previous employer was paying me? Because we're all aspirational, and I'm applying for another job because I'm trying to get ahead. But I will come back to this. Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka, just going back to the glass ceiling that Linda mentions, and if we look at what's happening in the political space and, looking at South Africa and our latest results, you were deputy president of our country at some point, and we don't seem to have made much strides in that regard beyond that. If anything, we seem to be regressing. It seems as though when the going gets tough, it is the women who have to make way for men to get into positions, and then we find other ways to accommodate them. That being said, we have made strides. But you started a program during your tenure as the executive director of UN Women, where you launched a program to help women who want to run for office. So how is that program going, and what are some of the wins, the gains that we have seen as a result of that?
Yeah, well, it is uneven. We are finding that around the world, women who are in countries where there's religious and traditional authority have a harder time. Women who are in countries where norms have been norms that are unequal have been accepted, struggle to break out against those norms. And in societies where those norms have not been fortified, women have a bit of a better chance. But also, I think technology has played a very important role in some of the countries. Technology has propelled women to go to higher levels much more than one would have expected. And legislation in most countries also has played a higher role. I mean, you remember we always talk about Beijing, which was a groundbreaking policy moment where in the world, women in many countries didn't have rights, where gender equality in most countries was not even a thing to talk about. But because of Beijing, the issue of gender equality and making it a human right was established. And those countries that have held on to that have made a lot of improvements. But in countries where you have not seen those kinds of changes, we are continuing to struggle with child marriage, with female genital mutilation, and all of those hinder the possibility, affect the women's possibility to get ahead, to get equal education, and therefore through the education that they can receive, to get to a point where they could be equal citizens and receive the rights that they deserve.
Just to that point, again, some of the issues faced by women, if you look at something like period poverty, for example, and you look at the situation in South Africa where girls miss up to 2 months of school just as a result of not being able to go to school because they are on their menstrual cycle. These are things happening in 2024.
Yeah.
Linda, how do we start moving here?
Yeah, and this is so close to my heart because 3 years ago I climbed the top of Kilimanjaro just for those girls with the Nelson Mandela Foundation, just for those girls that do not have access to sanitary wear and cannot go to school. And when I came down from the mountain, it was going to those township areas, handing out the sanitary wear to these girls for a year and saying, this is a gift for you for your future. This is not about giving you a sanitary pad. This is about you going to school, you getting an education, okay, giving you hope, giving you dignity to make a difference in your life. And it's these sort of initiatives, and there's so many beautiful initiatives that I see going around in South Africa to be giving these girls access to sanitary wear. My view, and this is just my opinion, I think sanitary wear, the government can play a role in giving girls sanitary wear versus condoms. It's maybe not a or. I would love to see more private sector do more for these girls in that are looking for this. But there's so much more to do for these girls. Sanitary wear, it may seem so simple, but I've seen it. I've been to these schools. We're giving these girls that sanitary wear is giving them hope for the future. It's giving them just that dignity. It's saying we believe in you. And then on top of that, I go to and talk to these girls and I say, one day you can become like me. It's not just giving you the sanitary wear because we love you and we want you to do great things one day, but the hope, because I was a girl like that one day. And somebody gave me hope and somebody believed in me. And it's how do we do more of that? And it's these initiatives that the Nelson Mandela Foundation have, more and more of that to make a difference to these girls. But it's sad. There's many girls that do not go to school and they miss an entire week of school. One entire week, some more in a month of not going to school.
Indeed. And, Thuto, just coming back to that, and of course, again, the importance of education. It's not just period poverty, it's teen pregnancy, where unfortunately the girls are literally left holding the baby and they miss out on school, and those setbacks are also to be taken into account.
Absolutely. We talk about these structural barriers, and they're really not spoken about. I mean, teenage pregnancy, very big one. A boy goes back to school. The mom is left with the child and having to think about the child. And that cannot necessarily be a fair playing field for the girls to start off, And in South Africa, there is still a bit of disparity in terms of actually women entering the education space, particularly higher education, compared to the men. And because of some of those structural changes, but also maybe just with what Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka picked on, with sexual harassment as well. We don't talk about those things. In various other sectors, women face some of those. Sometimes they don't speak up, they just exit the workplace quietly. Yet these are really, really, really things that we should not accept as society, both men and women. So the structural barriers, it's a little bit of a quiet, storm that we don't really talk about. And even things, we talk about policies at a governmental level, but policies at a corporate level. We talk of maternity leave. Surely it's a parental leave, because they are both parents that need to take care of a child. Because the minute you then expect a mom to take off work already. They are taking a gap out of, let's assume their leadership role, and that time work doesn't understand that language. Unfortunately, corporates at the moment, they don't understand that language. So, there's a number of things that I do believe we still really need to sort out. Yet we have achieved a lot, but there is a number that we need to sort out. It's unacceptable that we can have 2 months that a girl child cannot go to school because of periods and natural phenomena.
Yeah, and just getting back to women and political office, Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka, and we saw, for example, in a country like Mexico, when they went to elections recently, both the front runners were women, which was absolutely fantastic. And we look at what's happening in the United States right now with Kamala Harris, and she's now going to be the Democratic Party's nominee for this particular election. So in looking at that, you were at the UN at the time when Hillary Clinton was trying to basically run for the presidency in the United States. So what do you make of this latest development there?
Well, we have to really support this development. In a country like the United States, which is kind of a trendsetter, whether we like it or not. If we get a breakthrough in that country, it will augur well for many countries in the world. Just like when we had a government in the United States that did not support women as well as we needed women to be supported. I mean, I was in the United States at the time when they had a government that was against reproductive rights of women, and I was working with countries around the world. I saw how that pushed back the rights of women in many countries in the world. And I was also saddened to see how much that affected African countries, who had countries that were probably always not as progressive on women's issues. But when a big country like the US was pushing back and taking away from women's rights, that fell on many other countries around the world, and many women around the world lost the rights that we thought they had gained. The one thing about women's rights that I think we should all be concerned about is that the rights gained are not rights that will be permanent with you. You always have to protect and fight for those rights, because once you've already gained those rights, you could just lose them just like that. It's been concerning to see how many countries that we thought that rights for women were already covered just lost those rights. We need to find a way of making sure that those rights are institutionalized so that future generations don't have to fight the same fights that we're fighting now. I think it worries me when I think that some of the things that we may be achieving, some of the rights that we think we're acquiring now, future generations may have to start all over again to fight for the same rights, because these rights could be lost.
And that is really, really profound. So we have about 2 minutes. So Linda and Thuto, can I give you a minute each just to give us your parting shots as well, Linda?
So, you know what, I think we must take a moment and we must celebrate where we've come through as South Africa. You know, if you look back, we've come a long way. If I look at the organization that I work for, I'm so proud to say in Nandos, 63% of our organization is made of women. There's women in franchisees, there's women in senior leadership roles, there's women, when you go to a Nandos restaurant, you'll have a manager there. So we've made success, we must celebrate it and say we've come a long way. I think we must also embrace what our future would look like. Women got an amazing role to play in leadership. Women bring in so many aspects into the business world, from resilience to empathy to emotional intelligence to paving the path for future generations. and bringing diverse perspectives. So these are all the wonderful things that women bring in. I'd like to see more women in leadership roles. And my message there for the ladies is, and to you, Sakina, is how do we say we want to strive, we want to thrive, we want to be courageous, and we want to make a difference in this world. So yeah, thank you.
Thuto?
Sakina, I think representation really does matter. It does not only matter for women to have a voice, but it also matters economically. You know, the more you have women participating in all areas, and in particularly leadership positions, it can only allow the economy to grow because half of this population is women. So you get people that understand half of the population in making the decisions. There is increased productivity as well that comes with it, you know, because you pick from the best pool of people, both men and women. So let us just continue to get the level playing field for everybody in order to get the best out of everybody.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for your time this morning and your most valuable insights. And I'm sure there's a young lady sitting somewhere watching, listening to you and hoping to be you one day. As you said, Linda, all about hope. But thank you so much for your profound insights this morning. Our panel discussion this morning focusing on how far South African women have come in achieving economic and leadership emancipation in our country's 30 years of democracy. And thanks to Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, the founder of Umlambo Foundation, Linda Reddy is Nandos' global head of supply chain, and Thuto Masasa, BDO's national head of advocacy, for joining us here this morning.